great response to this training. So I've been in touch with Evelyn Alexander Wildlife Rescue Center, and I've felt for a long time that we really needed more help here on the North Fork. We get so many calls, people call and email North Fork Audubon and say, oh my gosh, I found an injured bird, I've got an injured osprey, I've got an injured, whatever, like, and they don't know what to do, and we always tell them, oh, we'll call Evelyn Alexander Wildlife Rescue, and I know that Evelyn Alexander is also like, always looking for volunteers, never enough volunteers to answer these calls, especially in the spring and summer when things get really busy. So we had the idea of doing the training here and getting more volunteers that we could put on a WhatsApp or a GroupMe chat, so that if you signed that form that you're interested in volunteering, we would have you on the list. And so if we get a call, we can just put out the call to everybody and say, hey, is anybody available to go get this bird in East Marion and take it to Evelyn Alexander, and like together, we can work as a group and we can do a better job of helping these animals, these injured animals, or knowing when to tell people, no, actually you need to leave the animal alone. But but Don's going to tell us about all this. But anyway, I just want to introduce. I've got Kara Leonardi, who's our nature educator. This summer, she's going to be doing, starting earlier than the summer, she's going to be doing Young Naturalists Club twice a month on the weekends, and she's also our shorebird manager this year for our, because we have a contract with the town of Southold for shorebird monitoring, both piping plovers and oyster catchers, and she's going to be in charge of that this summer. And we have Teresa here, I don't know if she might, there you are. Teresa, our VP, and Ellen from our board, I saw come in. And did I miss anybody else from our group? And then this is Don Lanham, who's from the Evelyn Alexander Wildlife Rescue Center, and he's going to be conducting the training. Oh, and a quick note, if anybody needs the bathroom during the program, it's right on the other side of this wall. So, any questions before we get started? Okay. Oh, I don't know if I introduced myself. I'm Peggy Lauber, president of North Fork Audubon. So, welcome everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Don, as she said. I'm with the Evelyn Alexander Wildlife Rescue Center. I'm glad to see so much interest in becoming volunteers for us. So I'll tell you a little bit about our center here first. We're Eastern Long Island's only wildlife hospital. We're dedicated to the rescue, rehabilitation, and release of wildlife. Been in operation since 2000, so it's our 24th anniversary this year. We provide rehabilitation services to the community at no cost. And we operate solely on donations from the private sector. And we rely a lot on volunteers too. So that's why all of you are here today, hopefully, to help us out. And we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission, as I said, is to rescue, rehabilitate, and hopefully release animals back into the wild that have been injured or sick. And preserve and protect our region's native wildlife by providing humane rehabilitation services and public education concerning the factors that threaten its abundance and diversity. In addition to doing these classes, I'm also involved in our education program at the center. We have education ambassadors, mostly birds of prey that couldn't be released back into the wild for one reason or another. So we bring them around to schools and camps, and we do private parties and stuff, and we try to educate the public, teach them about these animals and how they can help. And I also volunteer in the hospital 1 day a week. This chart is a little old, from 2021, but it shows the total intakes we've been taking in. And of course, it's been increasing every year mainly because of more human and wildlife interaction as the population grows out here on Long Island. It kind of leveled off a little at the end there, 2021, but that was probably due to COVID and everybody staying home. It's a couple of our patients. Okay, the role of a rescue and transport volunteer. Unfortunately, in this class, I can't really teach you how to perform a rescue. So I'm going to be focusing mainly on the safety, your safety, the animal's safety, the safety of any bystanders, and proper procedures and how you can evaluate whether an animal actually needs to be rescued or not, and how you can go about performing that rescue. So that part of your role is you're going to be representing Evelyn Alexander Wildlife Rescue Center to the public when you go out to do a rescue. So you have to remember to be polite to people and be respectful. And what we want to do a lot of times with wildlife is simply caught in fishing line or a fence or something like that. We want to try and just release them and get them out of danger. And they don't actually need to be brought to the hospital for that. When an animal is obviously injured or sick, though, we do have to capture it and transport it to the hospital. And sometimes you'll be asked as a rescue and transport volunteer not only to do rescues, sometimes we need animals transported to a veterinarian or an animal that's ready to be released. So you might be asked to just simply transport it to a place to release it or bring it to a veterinarian. So volunteer rescuers capture injured and orphaned animals and bring them in for treatment. We do not perform triage. So we don't do any kind of, as a rescuer, you don't do any kind of medical treatment to the animal. You bring it into the hospital where we have qualified staff who'll do that, and if a veterinarian is required, they'll arrange for a veterinarian to see the animal. Okay, rescue supplies. This is the stuff that I carry around with me. I have 2 different size totes for different size animals with holes. You can leave it.
Yeah, I mean, can everybody see it?
And I have holes drilled in the side so that the animal obviously can breathe. Some people also drill holes in top. I have a net here. Sometimes you have to use a net to capture an animal. I prefer this kind of net with a fine mesh because if you're catching a bird or something like that, you don't have to try and untangle the feathers and wings afterwards. Use towels to put the animal on, and we also use towels to capture the injured animal. The best way usually is to put a towel over it, and that both calms it and also protects you because they can't really see you to bite and scratch you. And I also carry a variety of gloves and a few hand tools because, like I said, sometimes you have to get an animal that's caught in a fence. You might have to cut some wire or cut some string or something like that. And the gloves I'll go into, that's for your own protection later. There's a variety of gloves you can use. So personal protective equipment is one of the things you're going to have with you. The net and or bird netting. I don't have bird netting, but I've seen that used to capture animals. You know, if you have a partner that you're working with, you can use bird netting that you normally use to keep birds off your plants in your garden or grapevines or something like that. And the 2 of you can work as a team to capture the animal in a net. Towels, I explained. I carry a mover's blanket for larger animals in case you have to rescue a deer or something. As far as full-grown deer, though, there's a separate class for that. So as rescue and transport volunteers, you may rescue a fawn, but you probably won't be asked to rescue a full-size, full-grown deer. The totes. We prefer to use black totes with a dark lid, because a clear tote, of course, is going to stress the animal out. If you have no other choice and you have to use a clear tote with a clear lid, you should put a towel or a blanket over it so that will calm the animal. So please, no clear totes. Wire cutters or scissors, I explained, that comes in handy to help release animals. A flashlight if you have to go out at night. Other tools that you might find necessary, I carry a small handsaw, pair of pliers, whatever you think you might need to free an animal. Personal protective equipment. So this is the important stuff, because your safety, of course, is important, and the animal's safety and any bystanders. So gloves, we use a variety of gloves. I have a pair of welding gloves that I use. You can get them at Home Depot for about $20. They're good for handling the larger raptors and larger mammals that will bite and scratch. A regular pair of leather work gloves are good for the smaller animals. Beaded garden gloves with the little rubber grips are good for the smaller birds. And you should always wear gloves when handling wild animals for the sake of hygiene for both you and the animal. Eye protection is very important, especially with animals like gannets or any animal with a long pointed bill. They're going to instinctively go for your eyes, so eye protection is important if you're handling them. Closed-toed shoes are important. You should wear long pants and long sleeve shirt. You may be going in the woods, and as you know, Long Island, we have an abundance of ticks. And optional PPE you might want to carry. There's EAWRC ice cleats. They come in handy if you're on the shore and you're walking on mossy, slippery rocks. They can help you out there. And of course, in the winter, if you have to walk on an icy surface. And knee pads could come in handy too if you have to crawl around on your hands and knees to catch an animal. What not to bring? Don't bring children and pets with you. And here's why. This is what we see. Our children and pets are, of course, cute and adorable, but to the animal we're rescuing, that's what they say. Okay, now as mentioned before, if you become a rescue volunteer with the form you filled out in the area you're in, and you'll have to download an app called GroupMe, and that's how we communicate with our volunteers. And we'll send out a notice saying that an animal needs to be rescued, and you can respond or not respond. Now, all calls should originate from the center. So if your neighbor calls you up and tells you, "Oh, I have a injured squirrel in my yard. Can you help me out?" We don't want you to go on GroupMe if you can't rescue it yourself. We don't want you going on there and saying, "No, we have a squirrel that needs to be rescued at such and such an address." We prefer that you call the center and let them know the details and let them post it to GroupMe, and they'll call your neighbor and get all the details.
Are they 24-hour answering the phone? That's easy. I know I've had people tell me they called wildlife rescue and nobody answers and they don't know what to do.
Yeah, after hours it goes to a service. There is a cell phone that one of the supervisors keeps with them that can, but yeah, during non-operating hours, there's really nobody there. You can leave a message and they may or may not get back to you. If you can respond to the call, of course you respond. Let them know that you can respond and that you're responding. If you can't, please do not respond. We don't want a lot of needless chatter on there. Because there are a lot of people that have this GroupMe, and some of them may be at work or trying to sleep or whatever, and your phone is constantly going off with unnecessary chatter. It can get annoying. We've also recently started, in addition to the groups for the area you may live in, like out here if you're in the Greenport group, we've also started a tandem group. It's called Tandem Transport, that you can, if you want to be on that, add it on there, because it's not on the sheet. So just write, I'd like to be included in tandem also. And what we're doing with that is, if you're out in Greenport and there's an injured seagull, say, and you respond and you say, "Yeah, I can rescue that seagull, but I can't bring it all the way to Hampton Bays. I can get it to Riverhead. Can somebody meet me in Riverhead and take it to Hampton Bays from there?" And that's what the tandem does. We work together and try and cooperate with each other so that you don't have to do everything all by yourself. Before you leave to respond to a call, Now, when you get that GroupMe notification, they're usually gonna give you the contact number of the person who called in the injured animal. You're gonna wanna call that person to get more information than what was given to you just on the GroupMe text. You're gonna wanna know, how is the animal behaving? Will the animal need to be captured? Sometimes people call and they already have the animal in a box or something. You just have to go there and pick it up. Will any additional tools be needed? Like, will you need to take something apart or free the animal or access it in some way? Will assistance be needed? Will you be able to catch the animal by yourself? Or is it in an open field where you might need 2 or 3 people to try and corner it and corral it? Confirm the address. Sometimes the address that's given on GroupMe isn't always the same. Or like there's a main street and a north street in almost every town. They might have the street right, but the town wrong. So just confirm that with the caller so you don't go to the wrong place. And if you can, ask the caller if they can monitor the animal until you arrive, so that when you get there, you know, animals aren't going to stay put, so they're going to move around. So when you get there, you don't have to look for it. The person who called it in may be able to point you directly to where it is. And give them an estimated time of arrival so that they know about when you'll be there. First steps in executing a rescue. Okay, most important, you want to make sure you have all your proper personal protective equipment, long sleeves and pants. You want to keep yourself safe. If an animal's on private property, you have to get permission from the owner to go on that property. As a wildlife rescuer, you just can't go anywhere you want to go get an animal. Make sure you bring the necessary equipment with you so you're not running back and forth. Observe and assess the situation. The most important thing, does the animal even need to be rescued? A lot of times people will call in, they'll think an animal is injured, but it's just behaving normally. Like, this is Audubon, so you're all familiar with birds when they're fledging and learning to fly. They might look like they're injured. There are some birds also that will fake an injury in order to distract a predator. So an animal may just be behaving normally and may not even need to be rescued. So we don't want to bring a perfectly healthy animal, stress it out and bring it to the center just to have to send it back and be released and suffer more stress. When to rescue. If both parents are known to be dead of a baby animal, if the animal is weak, thin, cold, lethargic, and behaving abnormally, if it's obviously bleeding, if its head is in an odd position, if it's got flies, ticks, maggots, or other insects all over it, if there's a discharge coming from the eyes and nose, and if the animal's in immediate danger, if it's in the middle of the road or something like that. If the animal has been in the mouth of a cat or dog, even though there's no apparent injury, there's bacteria in the saliva of cats and dogs that can cause serious infections in the animal if there is even the tiniest puncture wound that you can't see. So it's best to bring the animal in, have it thoroughly examined. And of course, if the animal is trapped, you want to help it escape. When not to rescue. Of course, obviously, if you're going to put yourself or anybody else in danger, including the animal, you don't want to do the rescue. Most bird species, if one parent is still alive, older juvenile animals, when one parent is still alive, if the injury is old and the animal is not in distress and looks healthy, a lot of times you'll see a deer running around with a broken leg. It's usually best to leave that deer alone because the stress is more dangerous to it. The stress of you rescuing that deer and bringing it in is more dangerous to it than that broken leg. It'll survive perfectly well with that leg. If you have to chase the animal, normally if an animal is healthy enough that you can't catch it, it doesn't need to be rescued. unless of course it has obvious injuries that you can see, a broken wing or it's bleeding, or some of the other signs I said before, discharge from the nose. And as we discussed, if the animal's behaving normally, but the person who called it in thought it was injured. And here's an example of an animal faking an injury in order to distract the predator. Okay, never attempt to rescue if it is unsafe for you or the public. Use good hygiene to prevent disease transmission. So after handling an animal and before handling it, you should make sure everything that you're using is clean. Okay, once again, we want to stress safety is the most important thing for you, the animal, and bystanders. We want to minimize stress to the animal. It's very stressful for an animal when we catch it. They don't know that we're there to help it. You know, they think we're there. They see us as predators. Our forward-facing eyes is an indication that we're a predator, so they think we want to eat it. And please try not to take selfies with the animals and pet and cuddle them, because that is stressful to the animal and can do more harm than good. Once again, do not put yourself or others at risk. You want to avoid power lines. You make sure you use a flashlight at night. You want to try and think like an animal, and you want to try and predict its behavior before it does it if you're trying to catch it. Noise can be stressful, so you want to try and keep quiet. And it is illegal to possess a wild animal for more than 24 hours unless you are a licensed wildlife rehabilitator. Okay, so now let's talk about the different defenses that animals use, because unfortunately I can't teach you how to catch an animal, but I can give you some tips how to safely try and catch it. So every animal has different defenses. Mammals use their teeth and claws, and they will bite and scratch, so that's where the gloves come in handy. You want to try and put a towel over them to calm them. They won't be able to see where you are to bite. They will bite through the towel though, I can tell you that, and it can still be very painful. So you want to make sure you know where their defense mechanisms are, where their claws and teeth are, and try and have those under control when you're handling the animal. Try and hold their legs if you can, and hold their head still. Herons, loons, gannets, and grebes, these are all animals with sharp, pointy bills that are normally very aggressive and will instinctively go for your eyes. Make sure you're wearing eye protection if you handle them. Gulls use their bills to bite. Swans and geese will use their wings to hit you. Hawks, falcons, owls, and ospreys, of course, use their talons and beaks. Once again, you want to make sure you have their legs under control and their heads if you can. And small birds also use their beaks. Does, fawns, and bucks use legs, hooves, and antlers. They will kick, can be painful. Okay, so you get out there, you decide that the animal's in need of rescue, and you gotta assess the situation and make a plan. Does the animal really need to be rescued? That's the first decision. How will the animal react? So depending on the circumstances, what kind of animal it is, where it is, it's either gonna be flight or fight. Usually they're gonna run away, but if they're cornered, they will try and defend themselves. You want to assess where the possible escape routes are. Are there hazards to avoid? You don't want to be stepping in any holes or falling, tripping over anything. Do you need any additional equipment or help? If you're unsure how to go about a rescue, you can always call the rescue center and talk to somebody there, and they can help you out. You can send pictures of the animal if you're not sure if it actually needs to be rescued or not, and they can possibly assess it based on the photo and tell you whether it needs to be brought in or left alone. Executing the rescue. Okay, the safest, most effective method to capture any animal is called the box over method. And basically what that is you would take your tote, you would go up to the animal. Most animals, when they're injured or sick, and they're not going to really move, or they're just going to sit there if they're that bad. And you can usually walk up to them, just put your tote over the top of them, and then take the lid of the tote and slide it underneath, and then just turn it over. That way you don't have to physically handle the animal at all, and you get it in the box. Okay, if you do have to go after the animal, if it is mobile and it is trying to get away from you and you determine that it definitely needs to be rescued, you want to try and corner it. If it's near water, you want to get yourself between it and the water, or somebody else between it and the water if you have help. Especially a water bird, once they get in the water, if they got a broken wing or even a broken leg, they can usually swim just fine. Unless you got a boat, you're not going to get them. You want to walk slowly but with purpose, so you don't want to be running at the animal and scaring and startling it. You want to try and approach it as close as you can before it reacts. Use a net or cover the animal with a blanket or large towel. As I said, putting a towel covering the eyes usually calms the animal, and it helps you handle it better also. Now normally, I forgot to bring it with me today, I have a stuffed owl, and normally I demonstrate how you would handle an owl. So basically, I've rescued great horned owls before where they're so sick and lethargic, they're just sitting there, and they let you walk right up to them. You can take your towel, throw it over the animal's head to calm it down so it can't see you. Try to get behind the animal, and then you want to reach down. You want to try and control its wings with your forearms and grab its legs so that you have control of the talons and you have control of the wings. And the head is facing away from you, so it's covered with a towel so it can't bite you. And that's usually the safest way to handle an owl or any other raptor hawk with talons and a sharp beak.
And then put it in the tote?
Yes. And normally I'll leave the towel over it inside the tote just to keep it calm. Okay, during transport, you don't want to be playing loud music. It's stressful to the animal. Don't put the animal in the bed of a pickup truck or the trunk of a car. Usually the best place is to put it behind the front seat on the floor in the back seat. Don't put a loose animal in the car. Make sure it's in a tote. You don't want to just wrap it in a towel and throw it in the passenger seat. No matter how lethargic it is, you never know when it's going to all of a sudden become active and you're trying to drive. Don't talk to the animal, even though you think it might be soothing, it's actually stressful to them. And if you have somebody with you, try and keep conversation to a minimum and speak quietly, because your speaking is also stressful to the animal. Now, after every rescue, you used your equipment now, you put animals in there, you don't know what diseases or parasites or whatever that animal might have had. So in between rescues, you're going to want to clean all your equipment. You can use either a solution called Rescue, that's what they use at the rescue center. So maybe if you bring an animal there and you drop it off at the center, you might ask the staff there, do you mind if I take a bottle of Rescue and clean my equipment? I'm sure they'll let you. If not, you can always go home, just use a 10% bleach solution and just clean everything off before you use it again, because we don't want to possibly make the next animal we handle sick, or your family or pets either. Now occasionally, as we've talked about before, there's not always somebody there. You might rescue an animal after hours or at night, and There's two options there. You can either bring it to the 24-hour vet in Riverhead, and they'll get it to us the following day. Or some people prefer to just keep the animal overnight at their own homes. So if you're gonna keep an animal overnight, you want to try and keep it warm, between 80 and 85 degrees. You want to keep it in a quiet area. Keep it in a dark area. Don't give it any food or water until medical staff has looked at it. You could do more harm. Normally, by the time we capture an animal that's sick, it's normally dehydrated. So giving it food could make things worse because they need to be hydrated before they can eat and digest properly. Don't handle the animal unnecessarily, no matter how cute it is. Don't be picking it up and cuddling it. It's stressful for the animal. Okay, every situation is different. You gotta make sure you use good judgment. Safety is of the utmost importance, so you always want to be safe. If you have any problems or questions, you can call the center. And then, of course, the best part of being a rescue and transport volunteer is when you get to release an animal back into the wild. And there's some important emergency numbers that's all in the booklet, websites. Any questions?
If the person's not home, the private property, and the person's not home, you still don't go on you can't get permission?
You have to use your own judgment then. I personally will trespass,
Right.
even though I know it's wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, because I've had people call and say, my sister's house, or she's not there right now, but she called me and told me the animal's
Right.
in the back,
Yeah.
I can't be there, I'm at work, but the animal's there, I'll tell you where it is.
That's as good as having permission.
Yeah.
Or at least knock on the door, make an attempt to get permission. If nobody answers, I would assume you have permission.
Okay.
Yes?
You mentioned that the animal's likely to be dehydrated. Why not water?
Well, it's likely to be dehydrated, but
What's the harm in water?
if it gets too much water too fast and it's dehydrated, it's not good for it either. And until medical staff looks at it and really knows the condition of the animal, you really shouldn't give it any food or drink.
The app you said, is that you download it on your phone?
Yes.
Does it work with Android?
It's called GroupMe, yes.
Okay.
Is it in the flyer, in the booklet here, does it talk about it? Don't know how to join it?
I believe the
It is in the
booklet pretty
booklet.
much covers everything that I, all the bullet points.
How does the app work? It just beeps you or something, or you have to keep checking?
Yeah, when you set it up, it sets up, it has alerts just like any other. You can make it vibrate or beep or whatever. And then, when it beeps, you look at the message. That's why it can get annoying if people are having needless chatter in the middle of the night and your phone is constantly dinging or vibrating.
What's the status of rabies out here with raccoon and fox, maybe?
Okay, that's something I forgot to go over. We have 3 rabies vector species on Long Island. They're skunks, raccoons, and bats. So as a volunteer, you will not be sent to rescue any of those animals because you have to have a rabies vaccine and special training to handle those animals. So you won't be sent to rescue any rabies vector species. However, if you happen to run across a sick raccoon on your own that's maybe walking in circles or something like that, and you feel the need to rescue it, that's on you. You can do it. You can bring it to the center. You will have to fill out additional paperwork because you handled a rabies vector species, and also be aware of the danger. We haven't had a case of rabies in a raccoon on Long Island in quite some time. Normally when you see them behaving that way, it's normally distemper, but you can't rule it out.
And how about mange with foxes?
mange is a parasite, it can be treated. So if you can catch the fox, if it's sick enough to be brought into the center, it can be treated. We used to, and the policy keeps changing, we used to give people medication to maybe put in a hot dog or something and feed to the fox to try and treat them. But we recently changed our policy on that, where we won't give that medication out anymore. I don't know if that's changed again because leadership has changed again at the center, so I'm not sure what the policy right now is.
What if it's a domestic animal and you know, a feral cat? It's not really domestic, but what if you rescue them?
It's not wildlife. Evelyn Alexander, their permit, they're a wildlife rescue and rehab center. We're not allowed to have domestic animals in the same building as the wildlife, so we don't treat them. Yes?
Who was Evelyn Alexander?
She was a donor at one time. She's passed away, I believe. But she was a large donor and they named the center after her. Yes.
I realized after you finished that my head is full. And the reason I'm bringing this up is it seems to me that if you can bring somebody along for a conversation during the rescue, you're better off. Huh? Is that something that can be, just to spread that around? I would like somebody to talk it over with as I do it.
Yeah, and two people, normally, especially if you have to catch an animal, it often comes in handy to have extra people to try and corner it and help you catch it. I mean, one time I went to a Coast Guard center to catch an injured seagull. It had a broken wing, but it was able to run quite well. And it was surrounded by water, and I was afraid it was going to get into the water, and I was never going to be able to get it. And I was chasing it around like an idiot, and there was 5 Coast Guard personnel just standing around watching it until I finally asked them, and once they helped and were able to corral the gull, it was much easier to catch. So it's always easier if you have help.
With a situation like the gull, it sounds almost like I would think maybe it's doing okay on its own, like it was
It had an obviously broken wing.
And always that would mean bring it in, like sometimes can they do okay on their own even with, I'm just wondering how to make those decisions sometimes.
Okay, that's a personal judgment call, because to be honest, yes, in my opinion, if a gull has a broken wing, but it's in a McDonald's parking lot and is perfectly healthy, eating French fries and happy, if you bring it into the center with a broken wing and it's determined that that animal can't be released, it may have to be euthanized, whereas in the McDonald's parking lot, it's doing perfectly well.
You ever get a lot of calls with broken wings?
Yeah.
Gulls. Yeah. Broken legs.
Yes.
I don't see the group me app thing in the pamphlet. Am I missing it? Or how to do it? And then the second question I have, is it possible
If you
to...
just go into the app store and just search for GroupMe.
Right, I have group me, but I
Okay.
mean, what is it, Evelyn, is there a...
Oh,
short
we have
intermediate
to add you. That's why
Right, it has to be...
when I bring these sheets back, sometime during the week they'll add you,
Okay,
and you'll get a notification saying that you've been added,
okay.
and then you have to respond to that notification in
So
order.
everyone is who fills in the sheet.
Yes.
Yeah, if anybody missed that as we came in on the table, there are the sheets.
And as I said, there's also a tandem group that I don't think is on that sheet, so if you'd like to be included in that, please just note it at the bottom that you want to be included in the tandem group.
Okay, and also, is it possible to assist the idea of rescuing
Yes.
a raptor
Mhm.
by myself without having the experience of watching someone and seeing? Seems like it would be dangerous, and I've also seen people rescue that have injured animals rescuing them.
No, yeah, certainly. If you see if an injured hawk comes up and somebody responds that they're going to go rescue it, so you can certainly say, "Hey, I've never done that before. Do you mind if I go with you and
Through the
give
group
me?"
name.
Yeah. And also with the handling of the animals, what I often recommend If you can, you don't have to do it on a regular basis, but if you can spend a few hours, a couple of days, go into the hospital, volunteer to work in the hospital, and that could give you the opportunity to work around the animals, possibly handle them, and you can learn from, in a controlled atmosphere from the staff how to handle some of these animals.
So you just, to do that, you just call them directly and call the Evelyn Alexander
Yeah,
directly?
tell them you
Actually,
don't want to do it as on a regular basis, but I'd like to come in maybe this Tuesday for a few hours.
Uh-huh.
And right now it's kind of slow, so they haven't been having a lot of volunteers, but during the summer it gets busy. They're always glad to have the extra help.
Mhm.
Yes?
There's a line here that says, would you be contacted for releases and soft feeds? What's a soft feed?
Okay, we call that a soft release. And sometimes, like an example, I've done it in my backyard with baby squirrels. They get a lot of orphan squirrels. They're already starting to come in this year. And they raise them from babies, from little pinkies, until they're old enough to be released. But because they've grown up in captivity and been raised by humans, you can't just throw them out there. So what we do is we bring them home in a cage, in a large travel cage, with a little nest in there for them. And I put it out in my backyard, and I just open the door and let them come out and go back in as they please. And sometimes you open that door and they disappear the first day. Sometimes they keep coming back for a week or two and living in that nest before they finally go out on their own. That's called a soft release.
I'm just curious, I imagine the busiest time for the rescue calls, well, I know from personal experience, is the spring, right? How many calls a day come in that would go in that group meet chat on average?
Not really. Well, because it's broken up into different areas. I live in Brookhaven, so I don't really see a lot.
Oh, I see, so it's literally like, so if we were here on the North Fork, we would only get the North Fork.
Whichever ones you sign up for.
I didn't see
Yeah,
that, okay.
yeah, because there's some people who like to travel and they'll sign up for all the groups.
I see, but you do it for your specific area that you can handle.
Right.
What are the majority of the calls? Like, what, are they for like birds with broken wings or for other?
Yeah, here on Long Island, it's a lot of seagulls, Canada geese, ducks, the occasional hawk or owl. Mostly birds. Baby squirrels, as I said, and baby season is coming up, so we get a lot of baby birds. The occasional groundhog.
I didn't think of this before. What if somebody calls about an injured turtle? Do you handle that, or should that be referred to the turtle rescue?
Normally, we'll refer that to the turtle rescue.
Okay.
We do take them occasionally, and if it's injured so badly that it needs to be euthanized, we'll contact Karen over at Turtle Rescue, maybe send her pictures and let her make the final call. But rather than send it to her, we'll just take care of it by us.
Mm-hmm.
But we do also treat, if it's just a minor injury, we'll treat it there too. Yes?
How do you work with, animal control? I mean, on Shelter Island, there's an animal control officer, do they get the first phone call, or?
Yeah, they normally bring, the only one that I really see that we deal with is Southampton, and they'll usually bring animals in to us.
Yeah, I got a call recently. Somebody said, "Oh, there's squirrels, like trapped in the attic, and the babies, and I don't know what to do." What do you do in that situation?
We tell people to
Move.
That's what we'd like to tell them. But we usually tell them to, first you gotta find where the animal's getting in. So that when you do get them out, you can correct that situation, so they don't get right back in. And then like if it's raccoons or something like that, we usually tell them to throw a lot of parties. make it uncomfortable for them to be there, so that they leave on their own. And in a worst case scenario, we might try and get them out, but if they're healthy animals, we're not relocators
So that's like, that would be up to.
or pest control, so that would be up to the homeowner to try and get them out on their own and then correct the situation so it doesn't happen again. We try to discourage them from calling pest control because oftentimes they'll take the animal out and they'll tell you that they're taking it somewhere and releasing it, but they're not.
There's wildlife management, Southold, Craig, I forget his last name, he's amazing. For healthy animals that are like trapped in your area, he will come and he's great. He's got a buck out of my deer fenced yard that I thought was gonna kill me, you know, and he's very good, but they don't kill or anything.
No.
But they're very good at knowledgeable of getting healthy animals out.
We'll have to get his number.
Our volunteers will do that too, with a deer that's stuck in the yard or stuck between fences or in a pool or in a well or something like that.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
Because,
we have a whole
because people will call, they'll find our number on our website and they'll just call us directly. They don't, even though we have right on our homepage, call Evelyn Alexander, they'll still call us or email us directly, and so it'd be good to pre-screen some and not overwhelm.
Yeah, it's a department Southold has, it's really good. I got to him through the police department. I called the police and said, this buck's gonna kill me.
That's good to know.
Do you work together with any of the local guys, Broken Antler or,
We used to
Strong Island?
do a lot of work with Broken Antler. He actually started as one of our volunteers and then kind of went off on his own. I know his mother just recently passed away and we haven't heard from him in a long time. I don't know what's going on with him, but we work with him a lot. Yeah.
What does he do? I don't know.
they have, some of the Facebook groups actually have, and you guys are listed on too, like different people to call based on what the animal is, like, is it a bird, is it a raccoon, is it a deer, is it a,
He was based
whatever
out.
it is.
He's based out of Riverhead. Him and his wife, and they do rescues.
Specifically deer?
he's
He's
mostly deer,
He's
yeah.
mostly deer, but he did everything. He's good with raccoons. He was good with owls. We use him a lot to. A lot of times, baby owls will fall out of their nests, and rather than us raise them and release them, it's always better if they're raised by their parents. So we try and get them back in their nests, and he was very good at that. You know, he was able to get them back in their nests, or oftentimes, one of the good techniques that he came up with, he would take a laundry basket and fill it with straw or something and get as close to the nest as he could and screw it to a tree and put the baby owls in there, and the parents would still take care of it.
Wonderful.
Yes.
I had some information about those ultrasound items that they sell to keep animals out of your house. I understand they don't work very well. Do you have any other information about that?
No.
We tried
I've
mothballs
heard
and they
mixed-
played with the mothballs.
I've heard mixed reports on that, as the ones you put on your car for the deer. I've heard they work.
No, the ones for addicts are inside the house, I understand.
No. Yeah, I don't really know anything about them. I know we usually tell people to play loud music and maybe put bright lights up there, just make it uncomfortable for the animal to be there and they'll leave. Unfortunately, that makes it uncomfortable for you too.
How does one get licensed to be a wildlife rehabilitator?
You can go on the New York DEC website and it gives you all the information there. And just so you're aware, I'm a licensed wildlife rehabilitator in the state of New York. It's not for birds. Birds are covered by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. You have to have a separate license for birds. So Evelyn Alexander has it, and I work under their license for the bird, and it's very difficult to get. You have to have enclosures that have to meet certain specifications, and you have to send them pictures, and you can only work with certain birds, and you have to have a certain amount of experience. So But the New York State rehabilitator's license will allow you to work with, you know, groundhogs, squirrels, animals like that, a few birds, the non-native species like European starling and house sparrows and things like that.
So it sounds like for the hands-on experience that we really need to volunteer over at Evelyn Alexander and.
Yeah, it's helpful. That's how I started. I started as a volunteer in the hospital, and you know, as a volunteer in the hospital, things have changed. So I don't know if they really still works the same. But I used to go in and I used to clean the enclosures and put fresh food in. And to do that, of course, you have to take the animal out, put it in a tote bin temporarily while you're cleaning and disinfecting, and then put it back. So you're learning to handle the animals, and you have staff there to help you out if you're not familiar with how to handle it. Yes.
How would, a picture up there of the great blue, how would you handle a great blue heron?
What I do is get it under one arm, control its wings with your arm and your torso, and grab its neck or beak if you can. Yes. And those necks, they can reach around and do a lot of damage to. So you definitely want to make sure you have that head under control, either the beak or the neck as close to the head as possible.
Do their legs bend? They have to, right?
Yeah, I've fit great blue heron in that tote there.
And what about ospreys with their talons? Like you mentioned their talons. I mean, those talons are wicked. Like, how do you?
Right.
What's the best way to handle that?
You want to make sure you have control. If you can get behind it, get a towel over it, and then you want to definitely wear gloves and grab its legs and have control of those talons. And the same thing, try to control its head if you can also.
Have you had rescuers get any serious injuries?
I know I've heard of people getting bitten and having to have stitches, and I know I'm bitten and scratched on a pretty regular basis. Nothing really serious though. But it's something to be expected when you're handling wild animals. Like I said, they don't know that you're there to help them, and they're trying to defend themselves and get away from you.
So wildlife rehab is not for sissies.
No.
I'm a sissy, I think.
So you're in Brookhaven, I'm in Brookhaven, there's not, also, so it doesn't look like there's a big network in Brookhaven in comparison to out this way.
Believe it or not, my wife is the receptionist at the center. She answers the phone and she deals with all these calls. And believe it or not, even though Brookhaven's a smaller area and has less people, I think more people are actually active. Like the East End seems to have a lot of volunteers, but when a call goes out, nobody responds. And a big part of that problem, that was why they started that tandem group, a big part of that problem is if somebody's in Montauk, they don't want to drive an animal all the way to Hampton Bays. So starting that tandem group has alleviated that a little bit, where someone can say, okay, I can rescue this animal in Montauk, can somebody meet me in Bridgehampton and take it from there? And that's generated a little bit more response. Hello?